At its core, Sweet Home Alabama is a movie that sees a woman saddled with the choice of who she's going to spend her forever with. And whilst this movie wants to wrap itself within the veneer of marketing itself as a second chance romance, I personally call bullshit because I don't think I've been quite as affronted at the audacity of a scriptwriter in trying to package what is essentially a scam choice as the ideal one for our protagonist in a long time. I'm almost amazed at what I got to watch because what do you mean between Patrick Dempsey's full set of hair, all round gorgeousness, and kindness, she decided that she was going to go with Jake? Nah, this is a travesty, an affront, an insult. Reese Witherspoon, girlie, I am so sorry. But before I get into my Justice for Melanie rant, welcome everyone to another Romcom Ganda Tuesday video. For those just finding my channel or who are just stumbling on this series for the first time, Romcom Ganda Tuesday is a weekly video series I have on my channel whereby I pick a rom-com from the late 80s to the mid 2010s. Often is a rewatch on rare occasions, it can be a first time watch. Either way, I watch the film and analyze it to see how well they hold up years later, especially viewing them through my now adult and slightly more cynical lens. If this is your first time discovering this series, kindly know that I usually split these videos into three parts: the intro, which is what you're watching right now, the synopsis of the movie, and finally my thoughts. As such, I will have timestamps put in so you can navigate it as you so choose. Now, before I move on to the synopsis part of the video, I would like to say a big thank you to my lovely patrons and YouTube members whose support have been instrumental in helping me continue to make content, especially since I started doing this full time at the start of last year, which was the last time I was in paid employment. And a special shout out to Kat, Lena, Sherry, and Holly for their extra support. You get all the hearts and kisses too. Mwah. If you too would like to support me on Patreon or become a YouTube member to enjoy certain perks, maybe even get a shout out, the link to do so is in the description bar. And with all that said and done, Sweet Home Alabama opens up on a 10-year-old Melanie Smoother and Jake Perry playing a game of tag. They are chasing each other just as a thunderstorm rolls in, and when they catch up with each other, 10-year-old Melanie asks Jake why he wants to marry her. His response: so that he can kiss her every day, and he proceeds to do so. Their kiss, though, is interrupted when lightning strikes at the sand between them, utterly turning his earlier spoken words about lightning never striking twice into a big fat lie. The lightning strike wakes up adult Melanie, who now goes by the last name Carmichael, played by Reese Witherspoon, and we can tell immediately that she's an up and coming New York fashion designer who is preparing for her debut showcase at Fashion Week. When she returns home, it's to be met with a lavish spread of roses all over her floors, which the movie tries to portray as romantic, but which all I could think of was that it would be a bitch to vacuum and clean up afterwards. I'm sorry. Melanie, though, isn't like me and is thrilled by the thoughtful gifts. She makes her debut and it's a smashing hit. Afterwards, she meets up with Andrew, said boyfriend, who pulls her into a room that ends up being a Tiffany store set up just for the sake of him proposing to her, and follows it up by asking her to choose her own preferred ring. Well, hello, Mr. Moneybags. Now, whilst the lovebirds are delighted at the situation, Andrew's mother, Kate, who is the New York City mayor, is decidedly not so, as she's quite certain that Melanie would not make a good fit for her son and that she's clearly hiding something. Now, Kate, it turns out, is right. Melanie is hiding something, namely the fact that she's still married to Jake Perry. Now, I'm not going to lie. For a moment there, I was confused about how on earth Jake and Melanie were married, because last I checked, declarations to marry each other at age 10 could not possibly be valid or legally binding. Sorry, my brain legit glitched for a bit until it occurred to me that they probably married afterwards. Turns out that they did shortly after they finished high school. But now Melanie is back in town, first to inform her parents Earl and Pearl smoother about her upcoming nuptials, but also to finally force Jake to sign the damn divorce papers. Turns out he's been leaving her hanging for the last 7 years. Jake, though, refuses to budge and refuses to sign the papers, which leads to Melanie engaging in some psychological warfare. Namely, the minute she finds out that Jake's checking account is still their joint checking account, the one they had when they got married, she empties the entire bank account and goes on a shopping spree, renovating the home, all with the hope that her actions would aggravate Jake and convince him that staying married to her was way more trouble than she was worth, and he would finally do the one thing she's desperate for and just divorce her, after which she would hand him back his money. Now, that doesn't work, however, and Jake instead storms out of the house and heads to the local bar for a date. Melanie follows after him, where she runs into more of their classmates, most of whom are Jake's friends, and they proceed to tease her. And increasingly frustrated, Melanie gets drunk and proceeds to insult them and their hometown, whilst at the same time she outs one of their friends, Bobby Ray. Jake takes her drunken ass home to sleep it off, and when she wakes up the next morning, is to find out that he signed the divorce papers and left them beside her on the bed. After mailing the papers to her lawyer, she goes in search of Bobby Ray, who lives on the Carmichael plantation with his dad, and apologizes to him. As she's leaving, she runs into Kate's assistant Barry, who is in town pretending to be a New York Post reporter so he can dig up all the dirt about Melanie's past. Melanie is almost busted for her false identity, but then Bobby Ray covers up for her and pretends to be her cousin and gives Barry a tour of the plantation. Melanie is still on her apology tour and reaches out to her other friends that she had talked down at talked down to at the bar, who then informed her that after she had split up from Jake and went to New York, Jake followed after her, but after experiencing the city and seeing her success, he returned home determined to make something of himself so he can prove himself to her. Melanie is touched by this, and she and Jake talk over the grave of their first dog, Bear, who had passed on while she was away. And caught up in the moment, Melanie kisses Jake, who kisses her back, but he eventually pulls away from her and walks away. Meanwhile, Andrew shows up in town to surprise Melanie and heads to the Carmichael plantation, which she had claimed was her home. Upon getting there, he runs into Jake, who eventually takes Andrew to meet up with Melanie, where she's waiting proudly for her father to finish his Confederate reenactment play session. Just as she tries to head over to her dad, Jake shows up with Andrew in tow, and when her dad introduces himself as Earl Smoother, the truth is out, and disappointed Jake walks away from Melanie, whilst an angry Andrew does the same. Melanie goes back home, and while she's sad and her mother tries to get her to not give up hope, Andrew walks in after her father, apologizing for having left the way he did, and affirms that he still wants to marry Melanie to her mother's delight. Now, initially, the wedding was meant to happen in Ireland, then New York, but Melanie convinces Andrew that she would love to have it at home in Alabama instead, and Andrew agrees. As such, her friends from New York arrive in anticipation for the wedding, and as Melanie shows them around, they arrive at the grand opening of a resort where a glass blowing company is featured, and Melanie is stunned to realize that Jake is the artist behind the thriving business, and he's turned the lightning hitting sand turned into glass phenomenon that they had experienced as kids into the basis of his sculptures. Jake shows up to extend his greetings to Melanie and her friends and walks away, whilst a sad Melanie watches him go. The days speed by, and soon it's time for Melanie and Andrew's wedding at the Carmichael estate, and the whole town, save for Jake, who tells his mother that he can't be there since Melanie has made her choice, all show up for her wedding. However, Melanie's attorney, Wallace Buford, also shows up to tell her that she's still very much married to Jake. Turns out that even though Jake signed the divorce papers, Melanie had forgotten to append her signature to it and had simply mailed it over to her attorney. That then brings the moment of truth to her, as Melanie has to weigh her options, follow through with her marriage to Andrew or choose to stay married to Jake. She chooses Jake. And even though Andrew is surprised and hurt by the choice, he accepts it and doesn't force her. His mother, however, is furious at his humiliation, and when she goes off on Melanie, calling her names, and then decides to insult Pearl as well, Melanie punches her in the face for insulting her mother, to the delight of the crowd. She then rushes off to go meet Jake, where he's setting up the equipment for his glass sculptures, and informs him that she isn't marrying Andrew and is instead staying married to Jake instead. They kiss and then return to the reception where they finally have their first dance as a married couple, the one that had been denied them back when they were 18 because Jake had been drunk off his ass at their wedding. The mid credit sequence of pictures shows that Melanie and Jake have a baby daughter. Melanie continues her work as a fashion designer, and Jake expands his business into New York, whilst Andrew marries a Vanderbilt, a choice that undoubtedly pleases his mother. The end. The way I see it, Melanie basically had three choices slash possible routes that she could have taken in this movie with regards to who her future partner could possibly be. She could have been a lesbian, which for me really would have been the superior choice for her. And I will come back to that in a bit. She could have gone with a rich, hot guy. Andrew, played by Patrick Dempsey, with his full head of hair. And for those of you who are probably wondering, why, oh, why, Noria, do you keep harping on Patrick's hair? Well, I don't know. Maybe I'm team consider Melanie your future and the fact that in say 10 to 20 years from now, you would really appreciate it if your husband doesn't start going bald. Because let me tell you, Jake's hair was looking mighty thin in some places and in some scenes, just saying. And of course, the third option that she gets is the high school boyfriend who got her pregnant when they were in high school, proposed to her as a result, proceeded to show up to their wedding drunk out of his ass, leading to her having to go to their wedding reception alone with puke down her wedding dress because her newly minted husband was sleeping off his hangover. And this movie, this film, had her settle for option three. And we are meant to root for it. The travesty, the audacity, the unmitigated gall. Now, I know there are certain corners of the internet that are convinced that Melanie is the absolute worst in this film and that she doesn't deserve either of these two men. To which I would say, yeah, I kind of agree, but not in the way in which they think. It's not that she doesn't deserve either Jake or Andrew, but rather the fact that she deserves way better, namely Cindy, the lesbian who grows up to become a softball coach in Nashville. Because hear me out, the bone of contention that a lot of people have with the character of Melanie is basically centered around three things. The fact that she lied about her name, and I will get to that. The fact that she was still married and never admitted to it, and I will get to that as well. And finally, the fact that she was being all uppity around her former town members, and I will get to that as well. So let's take it in order. Melanie transforming herself from Melanie Smoother to Melanie Carmichael. Now, do I think it was an interesting choice, i.e., a choice I will always side eye the movie for? To have Melanie change her name and by extension her identity when she decided to pursue her career as a designer? Sure. I get the symbolism of her wanting to leave her old life behind and hopefully reinvent herself in a new city. I honestly don't see a problem with her doing that. I read it instead as her journeying to a new city, to New York, deciding that it's going to be her big break. And so, a way for her to fortify herself on said journey was to give herself the metaphorical backing that she needed in order to convince herself to go all the way. And that was to imagine herself as a young woman who had the best upbringing needed to get her that far. I can see that. And if it was that Melanie had used that identity to, I don't know, swindle people out of money, pretend to be one of the elite, and so adopts this persona of being better than anyone else because her daddy owns a plantation, I will come back to the plantation beats, don't you worry. Then I will say that, yes, that's a problem. The issue, however, is that she's basically in New York. All she did was lose the accent, applied herself, built a name for her brand, and didn't go back home. Here's the thing though, fashion design is one of the few industries that you can get into and make a name for yourself without a focus in nepotism needing to get you in. Matter of fact, the number of world-renowned fashion designers who were basically nobodies from ordinary backgrounds is outstanding. We cannot say that Melanie made the choice to change her name in order to advance her career because she didn't need the name. It didn't serve her in any way other than for plot reasons, so that Kate Hennings, Andrew's mother, can look down on her and be suspicious about her. And let me tell you, whether she was an average Joe or the daughter of a wealthy Southerner would have made zero difference to Kate, because she still didn't think Melanie was the right choice for her son. Anyway, her social standing in that regard did not matter. So once again, why the need to lie if not just for plot purposes? I think for the people that were confused about how quickly Andrew was willing to forgive Kate, that's something that they do not consider. The fact that ultimately he is very aware that her name served nothing more than a way for her to accessorize a new identity that she wanted to use to create a version of herself that she could believe in as she headed to New York. It's why I don't fault her for it, and it's why Andrew doesn't either. I also am not hung up on her lying, or rather omitting the truth about her divorce status, because, and I need to emphasize that it wasn't her fault that she was still married. That honor belongs to the immature asshole that she was married to. Because please, before anybody, and I really do mean anybody, tries to spin Jake as this young in love dude who wanted to prove himself to the woman he loves and had applied himself all these years to build a business, to do so, yada, 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 we simply cannot ignore everything that came before. They married straight out of high school because he got her pregnant. The fact that he could not even be bothered to stay sober on their wedding day already tells you everything you need to know about recently graduated from high school Jake, namely the fact that he wasn't too thrilled about the marriage or becoming a father. All that yarn he was spinning about how he was happy about her getting pregnant until it occurred to him that the pregnancy would have taken away her choices in life is bullshit that 25-year-old Jake is spinning. A man who is happy at his girlfriend's pregnancy, with them just recently having graduated high school, would not show up to their wedding drunk. That is not a stamp of approval for that particular life choice. That is a screaming cry for help that translates to my life is fucked. And it's such a passive aggressive move too. It was her wedding day too. And this jackass that she loved ruined it. The fact that even her father was trying to defend his actions just speaks a lot to the fact that the town mostly were trying to gaslight her and we, the audience, into perceiving Jake as being someone more and trying to sow the seeds of his redemption. The problem for them, however, is that I wasn't buying it. I wasn't interested. I call bullshit. They were 18-year-olds, young, ambitious. I mean, she wanted more from her life. He wanted to be an NFL star, but it didn't work out, which in turn led to him giving up on himself. I think a lot of people that want to extend Jake grace whilst criticizing Melanie seem to forget that was the reason why she eventually walked away from their marriage and left town, because she wanted more for herself and she felt that Jake wasn't going to get himself together and that was going to affect her as well. She walked away, she chose herself and asked for a divorce. The reason why she omitted the truth is because Jake's piece of shit ass refused to give her a divorce that she had been asking for the last 7 years. Let that sink in. She walked away 7 years ago, asking for a divorce then, and consistently afterwards, Jake, because he was supposedly devoted to winning her back, never responded, which in turn meant that yet another selfish activist left her life in literal limbo. So I don't know, what was she supposed to do? Not date? Stay celibate for her non-husband because he was wielding their marriage as a tool for him to try and get her back? In any other situation, we would have read that as abusive as fuck. But this is a rom-com, so we are meant to let it go and think of it as romance. I call bullshit. I also will stand firmly behind the fact that, yes, Melanie looked down on the rest of her town, but she did the best she could. Her choosing not to tell Andrew that she was still married makes sense to me when you also consider that they've only been dating for the past 8 months. At what point in there was she meant to have dropped the, oh, by the way, Andrew, I'm married to another guy, not because I want to be married to him, but because the jackass never fills the divorce papers no matter how many times I send them over to him. When during their dating was she meant to have worked that into the conversation? Plus, Andrew proposed so quickly, she was reeling, which is why she chose to go back home to try and fix it. And we get prime Jake being a passive-aggressive asshole who still refuses to sign the document, tries and gets her arrested for trespassing, and goes out on a date at the local bar rather than just sign the shit. And of course, in the bar, everyone comes for her. This girl who left, who is trying to build a life for herself. Yes, I do. But back to Jake. This man had barely matured since his 18-year-old self. And you know what? Who is surprised that now that he's 25, rather than talking with her like a fucking adult, admitting the truth outright to her that he still has feelings for her and doesn't want her to marry anyone else and wants her to give them another try. He keeps stringing her up, settling her up to be humiliated amongst their friends, and is shocked when she, drunk out of her ass and aggravated to boot, lashes out. Like, sure, her outing Bobby Ray, that shit was vile and utterly unnecessary. Bobby Ray is a way kinder person than I am, but Bobby calling her work mediocre in the presence of everybody there, people who laughed, a setup for an humiliation that Jake brought on Melanie. That was also foul as fuck. And let me tell you, that was the point when I was like, hell no, this movie can't redeem Jake the Jackass Perry for me. And that's the thing. The movie never does actually redeem him. The movie never actually goes out of its way to show us why Melanie loves him still, the ways in which he's changed and grown, other than him now owning a business. I mean, that's one thing, yes, but how else has he matured? How is he the Jake she fell in love with? What does their love look like now? We don't get any of that. We are meant to just believe that she loves him just because, they kissed when they were 10 and lightning struck twice. Which, side note, homophobes like to talk about the gay agenda and gay people pushing it onto kids. And here you have a clear case of heterosexual agenda, what with 10-year-olds kissing on screen, but you don't see any objections on that, do you? Fucking hypocrites. But back to my point. I found it hard to root for Jake as Melanie's choice. I found it hard to believe that she loves him and he loves her back, which is why they are perfect for each other, because the movie never actually takes the time to set this up. We don't see it. No sparks, no swoons, no nothing. Kissing at the grave of their dead pet didn't move me one bit and just had me side-eyeing the movie some more because of its clear and obvious attempt at trying to manipulate us into having an emotional reaction to them kissing. I didn't buy it one bit. And the way they tried to paint Jake as being above it all, as him deciding that he wasn't going to push her and would wait for her instead to make her choice, I call bullshit. Because not even 10 minutes prior, this scheming piece of shit drove Andrew to go meet Melanie and her father. And when they ran into Melanie, he had the audacity to be all like, it must be exhausting living a lie. You and I in love. You and I are in love with two different people. Like, excuse me, I could have lived with him calling Melanie out on her lie. Because you know what? Valid. I can get why that was infuriating to him. But the you and I are in love with different people was so unnecessary. And a clear case of this dude willingly tossing a spanner in the works of Melanie and Andrew's relationship. Like, that is her fiancé. You know that. He wanted it to self implode because why would you be telling her fiance that you are in love with her, you immature garbage man? Ugh. And then to act all, I'm a bigger person than that because his plan failed and everyone was headed to our wedding. Like, nah, bruh, you aren't bigger than that. You're lower than shit. Your pride is bruised because your last ditch effort to break her up with her fiance didn't work. And now you want to play at being enlightened. Miss me with that bullshit. Melanie's first choice, like I said earlier, should have been Cindy, the lesbian who is now a softball coach in Nashville and whose choice had answered a question Melanie had about the game of post office that she had played with her back in high school. Clearly, Cindy was attracted to Melanie. I don't know. We never met the mysterious Cindy, but I think she and Melanie could have made it work. One, she would never have gotten Melanie pregnant just shortly after they were done with high school. That is for sure. Two, she still gets to be with someone from back home. And three, like her, Cindy made the active choice to pursue her own dream and leave their town for greener pastures and greater heights. That is a level of ambition that Melanie can resonate with. Justice for lesbian Melanie. She would have been saved this bullshit of an absolute plot. Or if we could not have gotten lesbian Melanie, we could have at least gotten her with Andrew. I repeat, Melanie could have had rich, hot Patrick Dempsey who adores her. Like, yes, I know his mother is an act. But at the same time, she was right in that Melanie was keeping secrets. And when she ascertained that her son was going to marry Melanie anyway, she had resigned herself to it. She's not winning mother-in-law of the year. And yes, Andrew was probably only marrying Melanie in order to defy his mother at every turn. But he did still adore her in his own way. And then she left him at the altar. A travesty. But at the same time, when you consider that said altar was on a plantation, then yeah, I do think the wedding was cursed from the very beginning. In the first place, do not get married on a plantation. Black ancestors do not play. Enslaved ancestors most certainly do not play. I swear, the glorification of plantations, of the Confederacy in this movie. Her father was a reenactor, for crying out loud. I just kept having to breathe through it all because, of course, ultimately, what this movie was pushing was for Melanie to align with proper Southern conservative values, namely, go back to the first man she ever kissed. First man she ever had sex with, got pregnant for, married, eventually lost their baby, and now they get to have the do over, thereby saving her from getting caught in the web of that Yankee fella from New York, who also happens to be a Democrat. I mean, the message is quite clear. I just don't think I like it. But of course, these are just my thoughts. I would, as always, love to hear yours. Whether or not you agree with me, please share them in the comments. Like this video, however, if you've watched this far but haven't done so yet, but I enjoyed anything of what I had to say, share it so others can find my channel as well. Or you can check out my gaming or ASMR channels if they sound like something you might potentially possibly be interested in. I have them both linked in the description bar. I will see you tomorrow with a new video. Until then, do remember, obsessing over the things you love, perfectly valid coping mechanism.